We're going to start with a cheesy plug for Coco. This is a Chinese crested hairless. Take a look. Coco, it's going to be my helper today. She follows me around everywhere. You okay with that? All right, I'm going to put you down. All right, well, today what we're going to do is take the ceiling and put some recessed lights in there. So this is going to be a retrofit, of course. It's an older house. We've got a popcorn ceiling. We do not have drywall. It's the old plaster and lath. So there are a few challenges, but there's a few smart things that we need to do before we do that, and we'll go over those in a minute. The first thing to know about recessed lighting is that the fixtures are very important to place in the ceiling. And in order to do that, you need a hole saw. And there's a reason to use a hole saw and not a jigsaw. We'll come to that in a minute too. But obviously the hole saw has to match the size of the recessed lighting that you're going to be putting in. Now, for some reason, I've noticed these things on sale for ridiculously low prices. I just bought a box of 10 of them with all the fittings, the ring that goes around here, and yeah, in fact, even the light bulbs, which I'm not going to use for a good reason in a minute, all for 35 bucks. So that's $3.50 each. Last time I checked, you couldn't even buy the connector for that price. So they look like they're clearing these out. That was at Home Depot here in Canada. Prices may vary, of course, where you are. Now, there's a bunch of things you need to organize. First thing you need to do, though, is be not afraid because it's electrical, okay? We're dealing with single pole electricity, 120 volts here in North America. There's not enough really to kill you, so don't go running away in fright. It's not a big deal, okay? It's an older house. There's insulation in the ceiling. We've dealt with that. What we're going to first do is put a pilot hole in, because what we know from a previous discussion is the beams in a house go in one way. In our case, it's going this way, all right? Which means the lights that are going to be in the ceiling going this way are going to be relatively easy to do, because the chances of hitting a beam in there are pretty slim. Once we figure out where that beam is and we can use a stud detector or just drill a pilot hole, whatever, we'll know that we're good all the way down. There may be a few surprises. This house is 60 years old, so you never know what's going on. Truly up there. There's a couple of ways to deal with that. Now they've got these fiber optic cameras you can stick up there and take a look around. I bought one. Really, it's a piece of junk. I could barely see anything. There's so much insulation and dirt getting on the lens anyway. You got to use probably good old-fashioned tools. So the tools you need in this case, a fish tape, side cutters, an electrician's best friend, strippers if you're kind of not too good at the stripping wire thing, measuring tape, an electric drill, battery or power, doesn't matter, a hole saw. Now, we're going to be doing this in a somewhat special way. First of all, these fixtures, which is probably why they were on sale, were designed for the older halogen style of bulb. We are not going to be using halogen. We're going to use LED technology. We're not even going to fluorescent. Garbage crap. They don't work worth a damn. They're just stupid. We're going straight to LED. Bit more money, but way less electricity. And more importantly, for an old house like this, less heat. And that becomes really important in the summertime, because when you turn these lights on, if you've got halogen bulbs in there, that's basically a heater. And if you've got 10 of them, that's 500 watts of heat that you're going to have to spend a lot of money getting out of your house. Even if it's up in the ceiling, it's going to be focused heat down below. You don't want that. That's where the LEDs come in. And as a result, because of the low heat, I'm not too worried about inserting these up and having them touch the insulation, because they're never going to see a lot of heat at 5 watts. All right, so let's get started. Number one job, we've got to drill a pilot hole just to see where everything is up there. Put a little measuring tape, pick my finger up there, see if I can feel a beam and see how clear we are. We're going to have a challenge because we're going this way and this way with recessed lighting. But the benefit is we're going to get rid of this really ugly $5 bedroom light that everybody has in these older homes, and replacing it with light where it needs to be, and much more efficient than the just throwing the light ever. Look at where I'm standing now. It's kind of dark. There's shadows. My daughter's bedroom is right here, and at nighttime it can get dark in this corner. That's all going to be changed once I get all these lights in. Once the holes are in, it's actually quite easy to wire them, because you can reach into the hole and pull the wire from hole to hole, as they're usually in a row, and you just take whichever one's the closest to the existing light, run a wire to that one, And the other ones, of course, all are in parallel and feed to each other. And we don't need to worry about the power because we're only going to be running 5 or 6 watts per socket up there, per outlet for the lamps rather. So all in all, technically pretty easy to do, but we've got to pay attention to some measurements, so we'll get into that right now. Now, this is an example of why we want to use a hole saw, because in this particular case, even though I properly measured the joists, the space between the joists, it turned out that for some reason there's a piece of wood up there, and when I went to drill the first hole with the red tape on there, I noticed there was a big beam in behind there, so there was no access to be able to put the housing for the light in there. So I had to put another hole beside it because, of course, now I know where the beam is, and I put the one there. But that leaves me with a hole in the plaster in the popcorn ceiling that I had before. Because I used a hole saw, I have the piece left over. It's sitting in the hole saw. So all I have to do is take some glue and glue it back. And instead of dealing with a 2-inch hole in this case and trying to figure out how to cover that up, I've got the original hole that I cut out, and all I have to worry about is really the little ring around the side where the blades actually hit into the popcorn ceiling. So that's a lot less problem to deal with. Okay, well, I'm up at the ceiling. Now, aesthetically, we would probably want to center things, make these lights in the center of my hallway here, which we can see is, oh, let's call that 42 inches. So we'd want to normally put it about 21 inches, which I've marked here. But unfortunately, we know from a previous pilot hole that I put in just down here, that's the exact location of a beam. And that's one of the problems you have when you're dealing with an older home. You don't get to do things designed from scratch. You've got to design it with whatever existing structures are in place. And we've also taken the stud sensor, usually very handy, but in the case of plaster and lath, I find they don't work very well because there's so much wood and plaster up there. Generally, it's telling me there's a stud right there where I want to put that X, which happens to be right in the middle of the hallway. So I have a choice. I've either got to be on this side or that side of the stud, and I've got to figure out roughly where it is. So I suspect that's pretty well the middle. So I'm going to go and assume it's maybe a couple of 2x4s that are stuck together. So it'll put me about there where the edge is, which means I've got to be about 3 inches over. All right, and now we're going to drill our pilot hole right here. And if all goes right, I should be able to get through this pretty easy. There we go. And we know we've hit clear area, and you can see I'm pulling some of that insulation out, which is always, so we'll reverse the drill. We don't really care what's happening there because now the real action is going to start. And this is a lot of power here, so we're going to get that going. There's a little drill right there, a little drill bit there, and that's going to be centered. We're going to put that like that, and we're going to start drilling. Here we go. And that hook tells me we are right near the end. There we go. And sure enough, there's our beam, so we've hit it right exactly where I want it. Here's my fixture, and the beam is exactly where I expected it to be. And basically, that's going to go in there all the way. Once I take that little clip off there, it'll fit nice and snug up there. And we will have a recessed light oh, geez, what do you do there? Right where we want it to be. And we're going to continue all the way down there to the end of the door. Okay, now previously we had determined that the joists in this house go this way. So we know there's going to be a piece of wood holding up this ceiling, a beam, every few feet or so. Now the trick is we don't know exactly what it is. There's codes that specifically detail what that is today, but this is an older house, so we can't rely on any kind of codes. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting a fish tape in the hole here. And these are not live wires, by the way, and I've hit the end. That tells me that that's the next beam. So I'm going to take that out. I've marked it on here with my finger. And lo and behold, we see that the distance between the joists is about 33 inches. And it's probably pretty exact to that because I would have used an exact inch measurement and not off by a 1/4 inch or even a 1/2 inch, okay? So that tells us where we're going to put the second hole, which is in here. And sure enough, I've calculated out. I've missed it just by about 1/4 of an inch, but that's okay because I just moved the hole over a little bit. We won't see that when we do the final rim and ring installation. And that's the guide we're going to use for all the lights down here. Going this way with the joist, of course, it's a lot easier because we know there shouldn't be any beams across this way. And in fact, when I've wired these up, what I did, this is actually really easy because these are 2-inch holes. I've put this wire here and I've pulled this out of this hole here, which I did with this. You can see that's this wire here. Oh, no, is it this one? Yeah, this one here. Okay, so I can simply reach up between the two, pull them up, dropping some insulation in the process. We may even try and stick some of that back up there. It's better up in the ceiling than it is, of course, on the floor. Remember, we don't really need to worry too much about fire codes in this case, because even if I moved out and sold the place and the next person moved in, it's highly unlikely that these bulbs will ever be replaced by halogen bulbs because they're going to be discontinued within the next year or two. And why would you take out a 5-watt expensive light bulb and replace it with an older halogen? Because those bulbs last, the new ones, the LED ones, last at least 20 years. So even in the future, if they want to change color or whatever, they're going to be still low watt, and that can give us some comfort. And the housings themselves, of course, contain a lot of the little amount of heat that's in there. And that basically completes it. We'll just put in the rest of the housings, screw down all the wires. Up here is where the live power is. Now, of course, I've turned the switch off on the wall. You don't want to be working with a live power outlet, so these are actually dead. But if you're really, really paranoid, I suppose you could go and find the breaker and turn it off, and then there's no way there's any power. But for the most part, if you just turn off the power and the switch and make sure you don't accidentally turn it on, because you won't be able to see the light because you've pulled out the old light fixture. And this wire simply goes from here and feeds the daisy chain all the way down for all these lights. So the same switch and the same original wire will work. Well, we've come to our second outlet. The one there behind me is already installed. We're going to do this one because it's like a Christmas light. Each wire follows the next one. So we have to connect two together. So we've got the blacks, which are the hot, and the white, which are the neutral. I would not be holding this and smiling at the camera right now if they were live. So of course we're working with a non-live circuit. Essentially, we got to keep them all the same color, and in North America they've all been standardized, so we don't have to worry too much about that. Just keep the whites together like so. And here's another little tip. I like to work with cargo shorts and a shirt that's got shirt pockets because I like to keep the parts in each one of the pockets. I've got my side cutters in one pocket. I've got these MAR connectors in here. We're going to twist these together like this. Once again, make absolutely certain that you have no power connected. An electrician's best friend, side cutters. Get a good quality pair of these. This is not something you want to buy at the dollar store. Good brand, Klein, best in the industry. I think these are Klein. I've probably had these for 20 years. And they're my sort of main tool for just about anything electrical. I can strip wires with them. As you can see, I'm twisting to make the physical connection and the electrical connection, which is just as important, of course. And what we're going to do is wrap the black wire from the fixture on there like that. We're going to take my MAR connector that I've had in my shirt pocket, nice and warm. We're going to take the grounds, that's the bare wire here, and twist them together. Now technically they don't need a MAR connector, but I like to put one on there anyway, just to make sure that we've got a solid ground all the way through. And we're just about ready for launch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck this all the way up in the ceiling like that. And normally I would be a little bit concerned with a 50-watt bulb in here because a 50-watt halogen little bulb GU10 is a lot of heat. That's enough to melt plastic and certainly melt the wire in there. We are not going to be dealing with that. In fact, I know that halogen bulbs are going to be discontinued in the next few years permanently. So even going forward into the future, I feel good about this because it's just not a technology that's going to be around much longer. And we'll push that little clip up there. And we have a fixture. Now there'll be a rim that goes around there like that one. And we've just done our second one. See how easy that was? You can do that too. You don't have to pay a lot of money. So as you can see, I've tapped into the existing circuit that's controlled by the light switch down there. So I didn't really need to do too much on that. And there's a automatic thermostat, a Nest thermostat beside it right there. And that, if you can find it, is an amazing device. Works on the internet, can control your heat and air con by the internet on your iPhone. Okay, so I'm a big believer in automated technology, so I've put a motion detector onto these lights. Let's take a look and see what they look like now. There you go. There's the laundry closet. And where there was once a real ugly bedroom type light, there is now a hole, which we're going to cover with an outlet cover. That'll be covered up there. Of course, we'll have to repaint, which was part of the plan anyway. Well, it essentially does it, and it's certainly a lot brighter. These are all very low wattage, about 5 or 6 watts each. You can see the hole down there for the hallway. Getting ready to do those tomorrow. They're on a different circuit. They will also be automatic.